the bottom end of the bilge pump. Didn't do much good for them though. I'm embracing an important part of Australia's early history. This wreck is a sunken time capsule of our past, and the Shroud of Coral is yet to reveal her secret. Now there are hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks scattered throughout the Great Barrier Reef. Cannon, anchors and ballast cargo are just strewn across the coral graveyard. And the coral entombs her victims very well. Now marine archaeologists dubbed the HMS Pandora the most significant wreck find in the Southern Hemisphere. She was carrying 14 of the Bounty mutineers who were foolish enough to stay in Tahiti. As she probed for a passage through the Great Barrier Reef, she struck the reef and sunk in 30 metres of water. The Pandora is just one of many significant shipwrecks that we're about to seek out and explore. So come with me on a voyage of adventure and discovery as we seek out these ships in the coral. After a fruitless search for the Bounty, HMS Pandora sailed for home with 14 of the Bounty mutineers chained to her decks. On August 28 of 1791, she approached the Great Barrier Reef and searched for a safe passage through the endless line of breakers. That night, disaster struck. The Pandora went down in the early morning. 35 drowned, and 4 of these were the mutineers still trapped in their leg irons. This is my new boat, Call of the Wild, and we're speeding north to the wreck site. The Pandora beckons me once more. It's been 10 years since I first laid eyes on her. I remember the wild reefs, the strong currents, the sharks. Even this little sand cay was the centre of so much drama. When the Pandora went down, just over there 3 miles away, the survivors either swam or rowed their boats into this tiny little sand cay. In fact, they called it Wreck Cay. Now, Captain Bligh has been given a very cruel reputation as far as the Hollywood and press have been concerned, but he was a mere lamb compared to Captain Edwards. Now, the mutineers suffered enormous hardships under Edwards. In fact, 3 of them drowned in the wreck because he failed to allow the keys to be passed down to them so that they can undo their leg irons. And then when they came ashore here, this is where the real hardship began. They were naked, he wouldn't let them be covered at all, and they had to bury themselves deep in the sand here, right up to their necks to cover themselves up. In fact, their skin was virtually flayed from their bodies, as good as a cat o' nine tails could ever do. And one of the mutineers actually said that his body looked like it had been dipped in a boiling tub of oil. Now, the 99 survivors left here in 4 boats and headed for Timor. When they reached England, the mutineers went on trial, and 7 were pardoned, only 3 were hung. So 7 were actually innocent of the crime, and yet they had to endure this enormous hardship and cruelty from Captain Edwards. And so the Pandora lay out there in a watery grave for 186 years, until in 1977, that's when I led an expedition here in search of her. It was November 15, the day we were to rendezvous with the RAAF plane carrying a special magnetometer. Wally Gibbons and I had worked out a flight plan for the search plane. We had already narrowed the search area down to only 2 likely coral bommies. My dinghy became the marker buoy at the centre of the search area. 11 a.m. and the Neptune bomber arrived on time. I gave them the coordinates we had just worked out, and they began to fly a series of parallel sweeps over the search area. Yacht Reverie joined us. Skipper Steve Dom was a partner in this historic expedition. We both placed our hopes in the skill of the magnetometer operator to pinpoint the wreck for us. For the first half hour, there was nothing, no readings. We were very worried. And then on the plane's final leg, the magnetometer needle suddenly jumped. A retro rocket flare was fired to mark the spot, and I knew then the Pandora was down there. We quickly anchored marker buoys over the site before the flares drifted away. The Neptune made another run, recorded a second reading, and dropped a second flare. Now we were very excited. Even the fact that the 2 marker flares were 200 meters apart didn't bother us then. The Neptune's radio operator said, "There's definitely a wreck down there." How easy it all seemed. Now we'll just slip down and have a look at the Pandora. But that was not to be. The wreck was not under or near the marker buoys. It could be anywhere within a 300-meter radius, and that's quite a big dive area when the water is 33 meters deep. We all took turns to dive without any success. The disappointment was crushing. The next morning, I decided to ignore the marker buoys and studied instead the lay of the coral bommy the Pandora must have hit. With the wind from the southeast on that fateful night, and the ship drifting west perhaps 100 meters after she smashed over the reef, I mentally pictured where she must lie. It was here that I dropped my anchor. My nephew Ron Bell was the first to go down, and he swam along our anchor chain to see if I was right. There's no mistaking the giant fluke of a ship's anchor. And there's my own anchor, lying across the wreck. We found the Pandora. I'll always remember that first dive on the Pandora. Only the corals and fish have adorned her these past 186 years. The sandy floor is littered with relics. The wooden superstructure long since rotted and washed away. Everywhere there are items of interest, encrusted and disguised by coral growth, but recognizable to us. This large object was once a galley stove. We nicknamed it Pandora's Box. Where the relics end, that's the bow. Wally is moving several bronze rudder pinnacles, which were carried as spares. Now that fooled us at first to find rudder fittings at the wrong end of the ship. Dozens of iron cannon are well disguised and half buried. Wally's counting them, but that shouldn't be too difficult, as the Pandora was a 24-gun man-of-war. Lynn now makes an exciting find. It's a stoneware water cask. There must be more of these buried under the sand. Time slips by. We've been down here 20 minutes, and there's only 5 minutes left before we run the risk of the bends. Those last few minutes are not wasted. Wally will haul this water cask up after the dive. It's a valuable relic for the museum and proof of our historic discovery. The Pandora reveals more of her secrets. That's coming up next on Ships in the Coral. We have a rendezvous with the Queensland Museum on board their mothership, Sir Walter Raleigh. Ron Coleman has brought together a large team of marine archaeologists to work the Pandora site in the months of October and November. This is when the weather is at its best. This is what you got this morning, Ron?
Yes, it's one of the things that came up today.
Obviously the butt of a rifle.
That's
Do you know
right.
what kind of rifle?
Well, it was a flintlock musket, but because it's decorated here, it suggests that it may not be sea service and it may have belonged to one of the officers.
Yeah. We found the Brown Bess, the popular one, didn't have this section here. It was a little bit like the 303 rifle butt that you see today.
Sure.
Yeah, so a flintlock one. And this is now your third expedition, Ron. What do you envisage achieving in this one?
Well, this one is a continuation of what we started last year with major excavation. We are in the stern area of the shipwreck, and we're expecting to find a considerable amount of material that belonged to the officers as they lived in the aft part of the ship. As we go further forward in the wreck site, we're getting deeper and deeper because the ship is almost intact. 1/3 of it is intact under the sand, and we'll be getting deeper as we go forward.
And what do you look at as the future?
Well, the ultimate goal, of course, is to finish the job, and I think we've shown that there's a tremendous amount to be learned from the excavation of the Pandora. It's been suggested a few years down the line we might consider raising the hull, such as they did with the Mary Rose, which would be a tremendous touristic attraction. But, of course, funding is always the big problem, and it's very difficult to come by.
Well, Ron, how do you think the Pandora compares with other shipwrecks in Australia and around the world as far as archaeological significance?
Well, I think the significance is twofold. One is, of course, being associated with the mutiny on the Bounty, and that grabs everyone's attention. But the other aspect, of course, is she's one of the best archaeological sites as well, and she's teaching us a tremendous amount.
The salvage is a round-the-clock operation. Each team has an inflatable dinghy to transport them to the wreck site 3 miles away. As one team completes their dive, another is waiting to take their place. I'll see you down there then.
Righto.
Oh, Gabby, can you mark my time, please? I've got 9:21.
9:21, okay, I've got that.
It's busy on the bottom. The wreck has to be measured and photographed before any of the relics are removed. A site map evolves, marking the relics visible above the sand, the anchors, cannon, and numerous ship's fittings. Hidden beneath the sand lies a treasure trove of historic artefacts. There's another Alibaba-type storage jar. It's identical to the one we salvaged on our discovery day. Teams change by the hour, but the suction dredge never rests. It excavates to a predetermined depth in one square grid at a time.
Well, that went rather well. Yeah. Did you see that part of a sword scabbard there?
What was that second thing?
Oh, it's a handle or something or other.
The yellow bin of precious relics are now entrusted to the expert care of Neville Agnew and Christiniana of the Conservation Department.
The timber's very fragile, but still sound inside. I think the surface deterioration is quite extensive though. Here's your sword hilt. I've taken a bit of the concretion off the tip there, and you can see the screw head, very worn.
Yeah, and the pommel would fit on one end there, but it's gone now.
And there's presumably the tang of the sword fitted in there.
Yeah.
Neville and Graham Henderson conduct a show and tell discussion of the finds after each dive. This sandstone water purifier is a prize find. It's called a dripstone, a standard issue to naval ships in those days. We follow one of the team on the second dive of the day. They have only 20 minutes bottom time, and Lady Luck will decide if the thirsty dredge uncovers anything worthwhile on their dive. The position of every relic is entered into the computer. At the touch of a button, we can window in on a close-up of any part of the ship. Each box in the computer represents a 2-metre square grid, and the relics uncovered inside it by the dredge. That's nice, Graham.
Yeah, the coral came away from it.
It's not a full wheel. Looks like it's intentional, doesn't it? What do you think it's from?
Well, my first bet is that it's from a rope making machine.
A rope making?
But
yeah. So it has nothing to do with the bilge pump, you think?
It's going to be a case of looking at the books.
Yeah. This museum excavation's really opened up a Pandora's box, but not of terrible woes, but still lots of headaches for the marine archaeologists. Because this wheel is merely a piece, one piece in a jigsaw that they've got to piece together. And until they find the rest of this, they really will not be absolutely sure of what it belongs to. As Graham said, it may be a rope-making machine. It may have another use, but it may also be quite a few years of excavation before the rest of it is found and we know truly what this item is.
Interesting piece there, Ron.
Yes, it is. Get a look at it. There we go. It's bronze.
Yeah, nice condition too. A bit of bronze disease coming up there.
Yeah.
But its function is an interesting thing to speculate on.
Well, it's the type of mechanism I would expect to see on something like ship's pumps, and it comes from the right area, and I think it just might be associated with ship's pumps.
Conservation of shipwreck relics begins on the seabed, because if we don't take care now, we can do more damage in 5 minutes than the sea has taken 200 years. So these relics from the Pandora will undergo an extensive conservation treatment before they go on display in the Queensland Museum. And 3 years of excavation work here on this wreck site has merely scratched the surface of the sand above the Pandora site. So in this wild remote corner of the Great Barrier Reef, the Queensland Museum archaeological team will be working for many more years on the Pandora site. We raise a relic from Captain Cook's Endeavour, coming up next on Ships in the Coral. Now this is a very special rock. It's not coral, it came from the shores of England. In fact, Captain Cook threw this rock overboard along with 6 cannon and about 50 tonne of pig iron ballast when he ran aground here on Endeavour Reef. Cook spent 48 days repairing his ship at the mouth of the Endeavour River. Here they came face to face for the first time with the Aborigines, the kangaroo, the dingo and the crocodile. Now back in 1968, I went out to search for Cook's cannons and I found quite a lot of these ballast rocks here. And I was very excited because I knew that I was very close to the cannon. In fact, I knew that they would have to be just in a southeast direction out here in the surge of the sea. But I swam, I looked for weeks and nothing. And I finally realised that the cannon must be buried deep under the coral and were not visible to the naked eye. And so about 3 weeks later, an American team came in and they were equipped with a special magnetometer which can search out ferrous metal under the coral. And about 3 weeks later they found the cannon quite quickly, but they did find that they were buried 4 feet down into the coral. And for me that was quite a disappointment, because I knew that I was so close to the cannon, and so terribly close, and yet I just couldn't see them. And I learned quite a lot from that first expedition. When Cook's cannons were salvaged, they left some of the pig iron ballast, and I'm salvaging this one for my shipwreck museum. A sheet of lead caught my eye. I knew I'd made an important find. Look after that. Precious, that one. That, would you believe, is something that the people who found the cannons either didn't understand what it was or missed it. It's called an apron of lead, and it was laying over the cannons to keep the vent hole covered, and that's to keep the powder dry. So it's actually quite a relic, because that belonged to one of Captain Cook's cannons. A very historic piece of lead.
Doesn't look much now.
When the ship Marina was wrecked near Rain Island in 1859, the castaways saw another shipwreck, a very old one, for they salvaged a bronze cannon from her, which had the name Santa Barbara and the date 1596 inscribed on it. Now that find created quite a Spanish galleon legend. It's an ancient wreck yet to be rediscovered or disproved. So every time I find an old shipwreck, I think of that galleon. But this one proved to be the Ferguson, lost in 1842 in Wreck Bay. The brass campaign buckles with the number 50 easily identified her. She was carrying the soldiers of the Queen's Own 50th Foot Regiment to reinforce the British garrison in India. The coral is littered with hundreds of musket balls and brass pieces from old Brown Bess rifles.
Goodies?
Yeah, quite a lot there. Oh, yeah. These are the really good things. Campaign buckles.
Campaign buckles?
Yeah.
From what?
From, well, the 50th Regiment that were on board, they were in the Battle of the Nile.
Oh,
and you see
yes.
there's a Sphinx there. Sphinx
Says
and the British crown.
Queen's Own 50th.
Yeah.
And then the Sphinx.
Oh, well, they were given these after the Battle of the Nile. There was about 800 of them on board, but all of the regiment were rescued. None of them died in the wreck. But when they went on to the Battle of Paniar in India, I think it was about 560 died. Half of them when the barracks fell on them. That regiment's still alive, still in Kent, still going after all these years. An island full of turtles was the castaway's salvation. Next on Ships in the Coral. When we were looking for the Pandora, we found 25 other shipwrecks in this same area. And 7 of those 25 we found on this one reef, Great Detached Reef. This reef is a navigational hazard because it protrudes beyond the north-south line of the outer barrier reef and has to be skirted for a ship to enter the channel beside Rain Island. It certainly collected a lot of ships in one corner. Nearby Wreck Bay also trapped several ships for the opposite reason. The bay appears from seaward to be a wide entrance. Then the reefs close in. The ship cannot turn in time, and the strong currents set her onto the reef. The Sir Charles Hardy Islands beckoned the survivors of most of the shipwrecks in the Wreck Bay to Great Detached Area. These two islands had no headhunters and a permanent waterhole.
Oh, gee,
Yeah.
looks awfully yucky. Green.
This is what the castaways all came for. Doesn't look very good, does it?
No, I suppose if you were thirsty enough, though.
Tastes all right. Tastes as if it's been here for 130 years, so
I'll take your word for it.
you could survive on that all right. Get your stick. See how deep it is. Yeah, it's quite deep. It's about a metre there. I mean, this thing, water hole's been here for a long, long while. It was marked on the very oldest of charts of Australia. Ever since man sailed this coral sea, the Sir Charles Hardy Islands have received their share of castaways and flotsam. Lynn, over here, look at this.
What is it?
Oh, it's a cask.
Looks like part of a barrel or something.
Yeah.
Metal in the
it's a water cask. There's the wooden plug. That's quite something. It can't be that old though. It can't go way back because it's still in reasonable condition. Pretty good though. Yeah. I wonder where the guy has brought that in. Oh well, take it back to the dinghy. Definitely a grave then, isn't it?
Yeah, look at the shells.
Yeah, this will be a child's grave, it's so short. Just wonder whether it's from the castaways, way back 130, 40 years ago, or maybe there was a beach to Mer camp here. They set that up here in the late last century. And this may be one of the people who
that's possible.
didn't survive. Rain Island was another castaways' refuge. It lies just a few miles north of Great Detached Reef and marks what was once the main entrance through the Great Barrier Reef into the Torres Strait. So many ships came to grief in this area. These green turtles are mating and are gathering for the greatest beach assault known to man. For Rain Island is the largest turtle rookery in the world. My sons Dean and Adam join in the fun. In 1844, the government built this tower as a beacon to guide ships through the reef. It rises 12 metres high and was lined with timbers from a wrecked ship. Food and water was stored inside for any shipwreck survivors.
Look at all the names.
Yeah, just about every person who's come here has scratched their name up on the wall.
Look, Dad. Fresh water. 7 feet.
Right, that's good. But where's the shovel to get down 7 feet? It's got to be down under here, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think if you were thirsty enough, you'd just use your hands, wouldn't you, dear?
Oh, there's a frigate bird, a young frigate bird trapped in here. Try and get him out. It'll be quick.
His wings down.
Yeah, get him out.
Come here, come here, come here, come here, come here.
Big bite. That's it.
Okay, you're gonna get free.
Look away. Adam, look away, he's got Lynn's hand there.
Okay, Birdie, you're free now.
Do you want to go, Lynn?
No.
You ready, Ben?
Yeah. I don't think you can fly.
Oh, it's you.
You go. Oh.
There you are, Birdie. You'll do all right.
Rain Island has always been one of nature's most bountiful providers, but it's also a tragic graveyard of animal suffering.
I got something.
It's a real graveyard here, Dean.
Yeah.
This would be all the turtles that have died from the last season. Yeah, this is the skull of a turtle. There's one, Adam. Last time we were here, we counted 560 turtles that had died in the one season. There's hundreds and hundreds of bones down there.
It sure is. And hundreds turtles were killed.
Yeah, they fall off the rock, and they go upside down, and they can't get back onto their tummies again.
Dead men tell no tales, but the bones of their ships do. That's next on Ships in the Coral. At Great Detached Reef, I rendezvous with a magnificent old sailing ship called the Zebu.
Yeah.
Operation Rally was taking a group of young people on a voyage of adventure. They'd just come from the Pandora wreck, and now I was offering to guide them over the 7 wreck sites I discovered on Great Detached Reef. I soon had on board an excitable young group led by Zebu owner Nick Browton. This is where we're going. This is a mud map that I've drawn showing all the wrecks, and we're going to go up to the Charles Eaton first. We won't dive on that straight away. It's a bit tide's too high. So what if we drop a marker buoy there? Okay. That's the Charles Eaton here, and then go around to another wreck here.
Right.
And have a look at that one. The tide's right for that. And then we can come back and I'll show you all these 4 other wrecks around this area, back near the anchorage. They're better on the dropping tide.
That should be an interesting project for the venturers.
And the wrecks are laid out nicely, and especially low tide. You see them. The anchor chain's just running right across the reef. Very beautiful.
Well, most of them have never seen a wreck before in their lives, so they won't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But, should be good.
This is the wreck marked here with the anchor chain running across and that big rock just beside it. Can you see the anchor chain across the reef there?
Not too sure.
Yeah, try the Polaroids.
Thanks a lot.
Just there, about 11:30.
Yeah, I think I've got it. It's a little dark shape coming
yeah.
towards us.
You want to drop a buoy on it?
I think that'd be a good idea while we can see it.
While my enthusiasm for exploring shipwrecks has never waned, it was refreshing to see the excitement generated among these young people as they explored their first shipwreck. This is the wreck that we just came off here.
Right.
On the outside you've got 2 anchors just in the surf line, and then the anchor chain running across, and you might remember there was another anchor lying flat there.
Yep.
And then you had the inside edge of the reef, and you've got gun barrels lying in here against the coral.
In deeper water? Huh?
Well, yes, just in a little bit deeper water, just off the drop-off. But that's the basic plan of the wreck.
That's the wreck site number 1 here.
Number 1, yes.
Thanks.
Operation Rally will return to the wrecks to map them for the Queensland Museum. Murray Island now beckons me, for there are legends of Spanish treasures to be investigated on this charming isle. Murray Island truly has some great legends, and some of them relate to early visitors here. There's one in particular that really intrigues me. The islanders told me that early last century, a raft came ashore here loaded with castaways and also several chests of coins. Now the islanders beckoned the castaways in, and the sailors were suspicious, but they really had no choice. So they landed here on this beach and struggled up the beach with their chests of treasure and buried them in the sand. Throughout that night, the drum of myrrh pounded its ominous threat, and the headhunter warriors danced themselves into a murderous frenzy. The attack came at dawn. All the castaways lost their heads, and those gruesome trophies were strung up on a bamboo loop, ready for a big celebration. But what about the treasure? It just lay there, buried in the sand. Now, perhaps some of the native children, dug in the sand and uncovered some of these Spanish coins, but again, they just discarded them just like toys. And then an old chief named Jack came up with the story that he was here on that fateful day when he was a boy of 15. And he said, "Him no Englishman, Frenchman, I think." Now, that's a very intriguing statement. Now, if this story is true, and legends are usually based on some fact, then there has to be an awful lot of treasure buried under the sand here. Probably Spanish coins, because that was a popular currency in those days. Now, we know that east of here there's a shipwreck, also carrying a lot of coins. And I've gone into a lot of research on this treasure ship and have unearthed these facts. In 1788, the French explorer La Perouse lost his 2 ships of Vanicora in the New Hebrides. Now, he built a small cutter from the wrecks and he sailed off actually toward here, but he sailed into oblivion. He was French, yes, but I doubt whether he was carrying lots of booty in coins. But in 1826, the brig Sun was wrecked on Boot Reef, and that's east of here, and she was carrying about 40,000 Spanish dollars, and her captain was French. Now, I presume the treasure was put in one of her longboats, and this was also lost when it hit another reef. We know that 24 of her crew disappeared. Now, we do have a solid link there, but that's not the end of this story. In 1890, a lugger that was owned by Frank Jardine was sheltering from a storm behind a reef just out here. And the crew became interested in an old anchor up on the reef. And when they pulled this anchor free, a mass of silver coins tumbled out. In fact, there were about 15,000 Spanish silver coins. This find became known as the Jardine treasure. And then in 1902, a lugger crew discovered another pile of Spanish dollars embedded in the coral just east of Murray. And their find also was pure luck. Now, a cyclone had pushed their lugger into a lagoon, and they had to clear a lot of coral rocks to float this lugger free. And when a crowbar smashed into what looked like a coral rock, out spilled a mass of coins, all cemented together. It's possible that these coins also belong to the Jardine treasure, or we may even have another treasure ship. Now, dead men tell no tales, but the bones of their ships do. And I'm going out to search for these shipwrecks. There's a few mysteries to be solved, and maybe there's a few coins left also. It was only a short passage to Boot Reef, 40 miles out in the Coral Sea, and we're all daydreaming of treasures on the reef. Denise Carlson is scanning the reef top with binoculars for any sign of wreckage. Our search over Boot Reef is thorough. We crisscross the reef top by dinghy, looking for any black lump or a straight line which would tell us an old ship lay on the coral. Then I towed Rick Byrne up by Manta Board for an underwater inspection of the reef edge. For 2 days we searched, using every technique I knew. The disappointment was crushing. We no longer dreamed of the treasure ship. But we'll always remember Boot Reef for the magnificent underwater scenery and action it had to offer. Tawny sharks are big, lazy and harmless, but they can give you a powerful ride. I sped 10 miles south to Ashmore Reef. It was due east of Murray Island and therefore a likely location for the elusive treasure ship. I haven't given up hope yet. Lynn was not impressed by the big tiger shark which greeted us as we began our search.
Over there, Rick. That's an anchor chain. Certainly a long black line. Yeah, you could be right, I think. Yeah. Looks like it comes in right from the other side of the reef, comes right through. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. There's a big dark patch in the middle of it. Is there? Okay, I think we'll have a look at that.
There's no mistaking the anchor chain running across the reef. Is this the treasure ship? Will Spanish pieces of bait lie where the coral tore the bottom out of the ship? Our excitement and expectations run wild. That's a cannon, encrusted with coral. And there's a second cannon, a big one called a carronade. We found a really old ship. Cannonballs are everywhere. 24-pounders, I think. Almost too heavy to lift. Denise has found something. They look like coins, but they're so heavily encrusted with coral, it's hard to tell what currency they are. And there's more down there. They've washed into a little hole in the coral.
Rick, come over here. We found some coins.
I don't think we found the treasure ship. A dozen coins is not a hoarded treasure. They look like Spanish silver dollars, but such coins were widely used in those days, and ships always carried some money to buy fresh food. The real treasure is the archaeological value of the relics and the historic importance of the ship in relation to our early history. This is what makes a wreck discovery a truly exciting find. Oh, let me have a look at those.
What do you think they are?
Oh, probably Spanish. You know, Spanish cobs being round. They could be British crowns if you're unlucky.
This one here, I think it's got marks on it.
Yeah.
Still see
Yeah, that one. Oh, that's a Spanish coin, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I've got some hydrochloric acid, and you'll be able to clean them up and see. Our search for coins in these shipwrecks is but one of the many treasures revealed in these sunken time capsules of our past.